Hello everybody and welcome back to Vehicles of War Thunder. In this episode we are going to be doing the first and hopefully only addendum type video that I will have to do for a vehicle that we have covered on this as a part of this series. In this case we are specifically doing an addendum to the Curtiss P-36 video. At the time in which I had recorded and posted that video, I hadn't realized that some of the French variants of the P-36 that I talked about in that video were actually available in War Thunder. Because of that, we are going to, and because the history had already been covered in that previous video, this video is going to be a bit on the shorter side, and we're just going to mostly talk about how these variants perform in War Thunder, starting with a bit of a refresher. But first things first, in War Thunder there are 3 variants of the Hawk 75 available. 2 are in the regular French tech tree, in the form of the A1 and the A4. The third variant is a Finnish-operated version that is a event premium in the German tech tree in the form of the A2. A quick refresh on what the differences between these 3 variants are in the American P-36 is that the A1 swapped out the 12.7mm and 7.62mm machine guns for 4 7.5mm machine guns. It also swapped out the engine for a Pratt & Whitney R1830 SC3G that developed 1,050 horsepower. The A2 added 2 additional wing-mounted 7.5mm machine guns and again swapped out the engine for the Pratt & Whitney R1830 S1C3G that also developed 1,050 horsepower. The A4 used the same armament as the A2 and the A3 models, with the biggest change being that with the A4, the engine was swapped out for a Wright R1820 G205A Cyclone engine that developed 1,200 horsepower. 100 units of the A1 were made, another 100 units of the A2 were made, and while 251 units of the A4 were ordered, only 6 ever reached France proper. 4 were lost at sea and 23 were sent to Martinique where they sat out the war. The remaining units that were ordered were sent to the RAF and given British equipment and designated as the Mohawk 4. Now that that refresher is out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about how these vehicles perform in-game. The A1 in the couple of games that I played of it, though the footage that you see in the background with the A1 is actually the first game that I played in it in a stock A1. The I will say that the vehicle performs like a dream in my opinion. The 7.5mm machine guns seem to perform much better than the somewhat larger 7.62mm that the P-36 in the American tech tree comes with, which actually came as a bit of a surprise to me because I often feel like anything under 12.7mm it doesn't do nearly enough damage, and even some 12.7mm aren't that good. Looking at you, Italy. As for the A2, I was not able to actually try out that version in a match, because as an event premium that I did not complete way back in the day when that event was being run, and as I'm not part of Gaijin's content creator program, I do not have the means to request even temporary access to a vehicle. If I wanted to go ahead and play that vehicle in an actual match, I would have to buy it off the marketplace, where the current sell offers start as low as 309.98 GJN, which, if memory serves me correctly, is 1-to-1 with US dollars. And I'm sorry, the vehicle is not worth spending $310 US just so that I can try it out in a couple of matches and write about how it performs, and talk about how it performs. But I can make some guesses as to how it performs. It sits at a 2.7 battle rating in realistic, which is actually 0.4 higher than the A4, and it should also have a weaker engine at only 1,050 horsepower compared to the 1,200 horsepower of the A4 once you get the engine upgrades. For whatever reason in War Thunder, vehicles don't come with the engine that they historically had until you get upgrades for them. Or at least you don't get the horsepower of the engine they historically had until you get certain engine-related upgrades for them. I don't know why Gaijin does it that way, but they do. So as a result of this, it has a weaker engine, which should result in it performing worse in a climb and just in general acceleration and everything, compared to the A4, which sits at a slightly lower battle rating. It will also go up against enemies at the A4, a theoretically better aircraft. Doesn't ever fight, and yet the A2 will have to fight those aircraft that a theoretically better version of the same aircraft does not have to fight. As for the A4 itself, however, it performs reasonably well at its battle rating. The only complaint I would have is that with the addition of the 2 machine guns and the extra ammo that goes with those, in this case it's an extra 500 rounds per wing-mounted gun, so an extra 1,000 rounds, I do feel like it eats through all of its ammo faster than the A1, and I don't know why. It just feels that way to me, and it should not be a noticeable difference, because they're the exact same guns. The rate of fire is the same and everything. It's just 2 extra guns and 1,000 extra rounds of ammunition. But for some reason, I just feel like it eats through that ammo much faster. But overall, the 2 variants that I was able to use in an actual match, I would say, are really great at climbing. They're really great at turning, especially compared to a lot of what they go up against at and around their battle rating, which is predominantly going to end up being things like the Soviet Lag and MiG, or the German Bf-109 and Focke-Wulf 190. You'd have a handful of British aircraft that you will potentially go up against, and some of those do actually have better turning capabilities than you, but they're British aircraft and they're running with 7.7s. British 7.7s are, in my experience, kind of crap, so yeah, you'd probably be okay. And in the case of the Americans, they're not going to typically have the greatest vehicles either. With the A4, you'll potentially go up against stuff that's armed with just solely 12.7s, so 50 cals, and I mean those should be decent, but they're also early 50 cals, which are kind of crap as well. They're still better than Italy, but they're kind of crap. And Japan, just don't bother turn to fighting any Japanese aircraft. As for China, they only have like maybe 2 vehicles that are unique to them at and around this battle rating that you'll potentially fight. I don't know exactly off the top of my head how well those perform, but you're probably much better than them, because China doesn't have particularly good aircraft, period, in War Thunder at lower battle ratings. But yeah, as the guns, as previously hinted at, are decent for their battle rating, especially for something that is smaller than a 12.7. Like I said, my experience, it seems like anything smaller than a 12.7 typically just doesn't cut it in general. But yeah, so there's really not much else to actually say about these vehicles in particular. Just a couple of extra notes. Unlike something I observed with other French aircraft when I was attempting to go ahead and unlock some of the French aircraft, I noticed that a lot of them tend to lack takeoff flaps, it seems like, for some reason, and I don't know why. They just do. A lot of them also seem to like having this like bayonet looking thing that swings out from underneath your aircraft whenever you have your gear up. I'm assuming it's probably something related to the radio or something, but it is very weird, and it is something that probably does affect the aerodynamics of the aircraft in some way. And so you would actually perform potentially better if you didn't have that, but you do, so it screws with your aerodynamics, I imagine. That partly depends on exactly if Gaijin is accurately reflecting the flight dynamics of those aircraft, which I have no means of testing. But yeah, so that's going to be it for this video. Like I said, it was going to be a bit on the shorter side because this was mostly just an addendum, and it'll hopefully be the only one I ever have to do. In the future, any that I have to do are hopefully only going to be because Gaijin adds in a vehicle sometime after I have done a video covering other variants of that aircraft. But yeah, hopefully I won't have to do these videos particularly often. So yeah. Next time, we will be either covering a vehicle that I have wanted to go ahead and do a video on for a while, but that I had to set aside the plans for that because a variant of it was being included in the Battle Pass, the Season 3 Battle Pass, I believe it was. And so I had to go ahead and set that aside for a bit while I waited to gain access to that variant so that I could actually write about it and only have to do the one video, because I really don't want to do these addendums if I can avoid it. Or we'll end up covering one of the numerous other vehicles that I've already done the research for, but I just haven't bothered recording the background footage and or my audio for. But until the next episode of this series, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all again soon with some more Vehicles of War Thunder. But until then, goodbye and farewell.